What's going on, AP World? We have Key Concept 2.1 for you today in the new curriculum framework, continuing with our Key Concept series. Make sure you watch all of these videos that will outline the entire new APUSH curriculum. All right, let's get started, and we will take a look at the wording in the new curriculum. Key Concept 2.1 says differences in imperial goals, cultures, and the North American environments that different empires confronted led Europeans to develop diverse patterns of colonization. And that's from page 27 of the curriculum framework, which you can download by following the link in the description, and you can download this PowerPoint as well. So some big ideas to think about with this key concept. There's quite a few of them. What were similarities in colonization among the Spanish, French, Dutch, and English? What were the experiences like with Native Americans with these European countries? How and why did slavery evolve in these colonies? And how did climate and geography affect British colonies? All right, let's look at Roman numeral 1. 17th century Spanish, French, Dutch, and British colonizers embraced different social and economic goals, cultural assumptions, and folkways, resulting in varied models of colonization. All right, Spain established strict control over colonization and converted and exploited many Native Americans. A major goal when it came to Spanish colonization was to make money. They were all about making gold and silver. A way for them to make gold and silver was that all trade must go through a few Spanish controlled ports. Whether they were in the Americas or in Spain, they had to go through there only. And there was a small amount of Spaniards that ruled the indigenous population. Spain sought to convert natives to Christianity. That was very important for the country of Spain. They wanted to convert natives to Christianity, specifically Catholicism, and they forced many into the Encomienda system and used them as trading partners. If you want more info on the Encomienda system, please check out my video on that in the description as well. Now let's talk about French and Dutch colonization. They were pretty similar. The French, they intermarried with natives and they built extensive trading partnerships throughout what is present-day Canada. The Coureurs de Bois were French fur traders, and they traded beaver furs, and they would live among the natives. They would intermarry, and they developed really good relationships with the natives, so much so that it helped lead to an alliance with the Algonquin Indians. The Dutch, similar to the French, built extensive trade routes in what is mostly present-day New York, and they encouraged settlement of the New World in New Netherland, which is located right over here. The British eventually take that over. English colonization, we see that colonies were based on agriculture, and there was a large number of immigrants, and they had hostile relations with the natives. Out of all the European countries listed on this slide, they had the most hostile or most aggressive relationship with the natives. Tobacco became a very large cash crop in English colonies, and here is a painting of a man smoking tobacco. And the headright system was developed, which encouraged immigrants. And this benefited the wealthy because if you would pay for the passage of an indentured servant, you would gain 50 acres of land. So the headright system encouraged indentured servants, and it encouraged wealthy to get more land. The English also saw many conflicts with Native Americans. The Powhatans, Bacon's Rebellion, which this is a picture of, in which Bacon and a bunch of poor whites led a rebellion against the governor in Virginia. We also have the Pequot War and King Philip's War as well. All examples of conflicts with Native Americans. All right, key concept 2.1, Roman numeral 2. The British American system of slavery developed out of the economic, demographic, and geographic characteristics of the British-controlled regions of the New World. English colonies encouraged immigration of men, women, and families, and rarely intermarried with natives and or Africans. This is what separates the British from the French and Spanish. There's very little intermarrying. The headright system encouraged more immigrants since landowners would receive additional land, and natives were often seen as savages by the English, and this helped lead to a racial hierarchy that developed in English colonies. So why was there an emergence of the Atlantic slave trade? Well, there's an abundance of land, and labor was needed for agriculture. There was a shortage of indentured servants, and this was seen especially after Bacon's Rebellion in 1676. Once the many former indentured servants rebelled, The English colonies changed their source of labor from indentured servants to slaves, since slaves would never be given their freedom. And it was hard to enslave natives. They knew the land. They were not immune to European diseases, as many Africans were. There was also an increased demand for colonial goods that required more labor. So English colonies decided to use slave labor. All right, slavery in the British colonies was awful, and this was based on a belief of racial superiority, and children of slaves became slaves as well. This is one thing that made slavery in America unique. Slavery had been around for thousands of years across the world, but this is the first time that this is really the first time that children of slaves became slaves as well. Families could be broken up at any time, and slaves relied on kinship networks and surrogate relatives, basically like adopted families or really close family friends that would care for slaves when they were broken up. Slave resistance absolutely did happen. Most of it came in covert forms, whether it was working slowly, faking illness, running away, breaking tools, etc. It was not very often that you saw a rebellion, but rebellions did occur. And one of the earliest examples of a slave rebellion is the Stono Rebellion in 1739 in South Carolina. 100 Africans killed several whites, and they tried to flee to Spanish Florida. They were eventually caught. Many of them were executed, and as a result of this, and every time there's a slave rebellion in U.S. history, you will see more harsh laws are passed, and that happens there as well. All right, we'll finish up with key concept 2.1, Roman numeral 3, along with other factors, environmental and geographical variations, including climate and natural resources, contributed to regional differences in what would become the British colonies. Most of New England was based on Puritan beliefs, and these were individuals that wanted to purify the Anglican Church or the Church of England. They did not want to separate from it. They simply wanted to purify it of Catholic rituals. They believed in predestination, which means that your fate was decided prior to birth, whether you would go to heaven or hell. And the man that you should associate with the Puritans is John Winthrop from the Massachusetts Bay Colony. He gave this famous speech, A City Upon a Hill, this idea that Massachusetts Bay would be a model society for the rest of the world to look up to. There was very little religious toleration for others, as seen with Anne Hutchinson and Roger Williams when they were expelled from the colony. They also had town hall meetings in which church members had tremendous amounts of power. The New England economy saw a mixture of agriculture, fishing, and commerce, and Boston became a major port city because of this commerce. There was a colder climate with a rocky terrain that did not allow for large plantations like the South did. The middle colonies, when we're talking about like New York and Pennsylvania, they tended to be the most diverse demographically, religiously, and ethnically. The Quakers settled in Pennsylvania when this guy, William Penn, was granted a proprietorship, and they were very religiously tolerant. So this is why you see a very large, diverse population in the middle colonies. And one thing that's unique about Pennsylvania and the Quakers is that women in Pennsylvania had more rights, and the Quakers allowed women equal positions in church. This was not seen very often in colonial America. And there also was a large number of immigrants from Germany as well. All right, the Chesapeake colonies, which are Maryland and Virginia, and we're going to talk a little bit about North Carolina. But it's important to know that Virginia and Maryland are these two colonies together are the Chesapeake colonies, and that's because here's the Chesapeake Bay right in between them. So what did these three colonies focus on? Well, they relied heavily on tobacco, and as a result, these large plantations developed, and long work days and growing seasons were customary on these plantations. Again, tobacco exhausted land, which led to expansion and conflicts with natives. Think of Bacon's Rebellion, an example of conflict with natives. And up until the 17th century, most of the labor was made up of indentured servants. After Bacon's Rebellion, the shift begins to rely more on slave labor as opposed to indentured servants. The southern colonies of West Indies, this is where farming was really, really hard. In South Carolina and Georgia, rice was a major staple crop, and this was very arduous labor. There were long days and long growing seasons. You would be in about a foot or two of water growing. It was just long days, hot weather, wet, and not fun whatsoever. Many white laborers refused to work in the rice fields, and this led to an increase in slave labor as well. In the West Indies, including Barbados, sugar cultivation was a major part of the economy, and just like South Carolina and Georgia, which grew rice, sugar was very arduous to grow, and slave labor was heavily used in the West Indies. In many instances in the colonies, slaves made up a significant, if not a majority part of the population, and this led to the development of slave codes, which were laws to regulate slave behavior. And this gave incredible power to slave owners over slaves. All right, we'll finish up with some test tips for this. The multiple choice questions. Be familiar with the goals of European colonization. Know the differences between British and the other European colonies, and what was the impact of religion in the British colonies, specifically when it comes to the Puritans. For short answer, be able to compare British colonies, geography, religion, economy, whether it be the North and the South or the North and the Middle. And essay questions, you could see something on the reasons for the development of slavery. All right, that's everything you need to know about Key Concept 2.1. If you have not already, please take a moment and subscribe to my channel and help me spread the word. If you found this video helpful, please put it on Facebook or Twitter or share with anybody in your class or your teachers as well. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below and I will be happy to answer them. Thank you guys very much for watching and have a good day.